you know, President Trump came in elected democratically, but he's trying to rule like an autocrat and pushing the limits all the time. And Americans don't want an autocrat. Americans voted for him, but that doesn't mean that they want to tear apart the entire system and let him do whatever he wants. And that's what we're seeing.
What does it say to you when you hear citizens out there expressing their regret for taking the step which they now think is a part of hurting the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people thought that this was an ordinary election and that whatever happened, the rules would still be followed, that this would still be a constitutional democracy like we have been for almost 250 years. The thing is, it's not. And Americans haven't experienced this kind of march toward dismantling democratic institutions that we're experiencing now, and all of the fallout from that. You know, you haven't seen people outright defying court orders, calling for judges to be impeached, or getting rid of the entire anti-corruption system and putting a billionaire in charge of cutting things left and right with no control, no supervision. And that, I think, is shocking to people. People took for granted, maybe, some of the systems that we had in place. And that isn't a partisan issue. You know, the rule of law, checks and balances, separation of powers, those are principles that are core American democratic ideals that everyone learned about in, I don't know, first grade. And that's what's being attacked systematically. There's a lot of other noise around many other policy issues that people care about, but at the heart of it, there's this. And that's what's going to change things over the long term in the United States.
Well, the whole idea of due process in terms of the individuals who were forced onto a plane and shipped off to El Salvador, and they're like, no, I'm not a member of a gang. You know, that process has not been afforded them. In terms of this conversation, the work that RepresentUs does at the grassroots level, speak to that if you could, in terms of helping organize and communicate a lot of the strategies you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we are a nonpartisan organization and we take that very seriously. We think that everyone should care about these issues, left or right, wherever you are, and we are trying to communicate about what's happening in ways that are really easy for people to understand. You know, if you go on our social media channels, our website, and so on, you'll see a lot of material on that, and then we try to bring people into a movement, whatever level you're comfortable at, right? Maybe that's just picking up the phone and calling your representative. Maybe that's getting an in-depth training to become a community organizer. People are hungry for things to do. They're not feeling like their representatives are doing those things, so they want to.
They're ready to do it. They're ready to do it.